Minister Stirling Hinchliffe is the Minister for Transport. Minister, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
You're running more trains today than you were across the whole of the network in September. How?
Well, before the opening of the Recruitment Peninsula line, we saw 1,218 services run each day on the Monday to Thursday timetable. Now, there was the ambition from Queensland Rail to increase that to 1,306 services on that each day on that timetable from October 4. Now, clearly, we were not in a position, and they were not in a position to meet that high objective. And so now, under the interim timetable, there are now some 1,276 services a day, which is an increase. It means that we're seeing 4.76% higher levels of services than there were in September.
So why was there a need to cancel 70 train services yesterday?
That was required in order to ensure that we meet and deliver this higher level of service that we're wanting to provide to the whole of our network in our peak periods, particularly obviously our peak AM and peak PM periods in the weekday.
How much is this costing the taxpayer in overtime?
The detailed figures of how much overtime is being paid as a consequence of some of these bring forwards of crews are details that I understand you'd made a request to Queensland Rail, and I understand Queensland Rail is in the process of providing that to you. I don't have that figure right in front of me. I understand that we are running overtime levels of around 30%. So there is a cost to this, and this is a consequence of us. Clearly, it's a consequence of there not being the levels of train crew that we want to have to provide the level of services that we want to provide, and rightfully South East Queensland commuters expect.
This smacks of the health payroll debacle. Back then, the Labor government was warned of what was happening, went live anyhow, and the taxpayer paid for it through the nose. This looks like a smaller version of the same principle. I
absolutely accept that it's been unacceptable and appalling that we got to the situation where the October 4 timetable could not be delivered. That occurred because Queensland Rail consistently determined and considered that they could deliver it with the resources that they had. That was the advice I was consistently receiving. Let
me ask you.
As indeed, the email that I received from Mr. Pluto, which raised concerns and questions around crewing issues around a specifically different matter, but generally. And the advice that I sought in order to respond, for my office to respond to Mr. Pluto, reiterated Queensland Rail's advice that they were that these issues around crewing were being managed.
Well, this is the revelation that came in the papers on the weekend, that in March you were warned by someone that didn't even work for Queensland Rail that you weren't training drivers, you didn't have enough in the system. What did you do about that when he informed you in March and your office responded to him? You clearly knew at the beginning of the year.
Well, that correspondence in March, as you say, was specifically relating to the introduction of the new generation rolling stock and the question that there were not enough train crew to be able to and trained in that rolling stock. That clearly is, there was a process in place in responding to that and dealing with the new rolling stock coming online later this year, potentially early next year. That's always been the expectation. But as I say, what I did when I received that correspondence, when I received that email, was sought the advice from Queensland Rail. And the advice they gave me, which was consistently the advice they were giving me whenever questions were being asked and raised around the questions of crewing and the capability to deliver the services that we need, is that they had it in hand and they were dealing with it. And that it did
But
include...
this person who didn't even work for Queensland Rail spelt it out for you. He said, quote, "Your current drivers can't drive the trains. You need 60 more and you have not even begun training. Your department said we would see these services running in 2016 and it takes at least 12 months to train a new driver. The equipment to train the drivers on the new trains is not even installed," quote unquote.
And as you are making clear there, Steve, by quoting those things, where that is in reference to the new generation rolling stock. That's not a factor in the issues that we're dealing with right now.
So you went to Queensland Rail and said, "Is this true?" And they said, "Everything's fine, Minister."
Yes.
In essence.
In essence.
And you accepted that.
That's what was communicated to Mr. Pluter.
So far, 3 people have been stood aside or sacked. Did you ask for their resignation or did they offer them?
No, I did not ask. These were matters that, when it comes to the resignation of the chair of the former chair of Queensland Rail Board and of the former CEO, they made the determination that because of the lack of information that had been provided to myself and the other shareholding minister, they determined that it was appropriate for them to resign.
So they said, "We've done the wrong thing by you, Minister. We're going to quit."
In essence, that was the case.
Why did your fellow shareholding minister, Treasurer Curtis Pitt, remove the former Auditor General of Queensland, Glenn Poole, about 6-7 months ago, from the board of Queensland Rail?
That was. I think is a different time frame to what you've just described. But I think it was somewhere between 6 and 7 months. But he was on the board of Queensland Rail. He can add up. He's the former Auditor General of Queensland, and he was removed by your government. Why? Well, Mr. Poole's term expired, and as always, in a range of fields across government boards, we're always looking for the range of skills and the range of fresh ideas and input into issues. And so a determination was made at that time that there was an opportunity for a new set of skills and input into the board.
Do you accept now that looks like a very poor decision to remove a former Auditor General who's familiar with the public service, familiar with timesheets and the like, that he could actually see what was happening?
Obviously...
Was it a poor decision?
Well, obviously, Mr. Poole, I'm not going to go into the details of Mr. Poole's performance and activities, but Mr. Poole was obviously part of the board and had the opportunity to be raising these issues and concerns at the time of his membership of the board, and that did not appear to have happened at his time during the board. So
you're not aware of him expressing any concern about what was happening inside QR at a board level at that time?
I'm not aware so.
Okay, why did your fellow shareholding minister, Curtis Pitt, remove him or not reappoint him?
That's not a matter that I've discussed with Mr. Pitt.
Okay. You haven't asked?
No, well.
Okay.
I have been dealing with the board members that have been part of the board while I've been the minister.
All right. Now, you've heard the opposition repeatedly say that the system of Westminster accountability says that the buck stops with the minister. Peter Beattie used to be quite famous for this. The buck stops with me, I'll fix it. You've said the buck stops with me, but you're not going to resign. Why does everyone else resign except you?
Because, as you just alluded to, Mr. Beattie's stance on those things was that he took responsibility and he set out to fix things. The Premier has made it clear to me that she wants me to be working 100% on fixing the issue, on dealing with the matters that are before and a challenge, while maintaining the level of service delivery that we're seeing.
So how long will this constant rejigging of rosters go on for, Minister?
Well, clearly, we are working under the basis of the 5-point plan that I put forward and that I have the support of government for around dealing with and addressing the issues in relation to the shortage of train crew. That's a vitally important element, and that needs to be progressed and be able to perform so that we can take things further than the the interim timetable that's been established in response to the inability to deliver on that very high and, as the former CEO said, too ambitious of a timetable that was instituted on the 4th of October.
So how long is this going to go on for, where you scrap services on weekends just to make sure things run properly on Monday?
Well, they are specific issues where the acting CEO of Queensland Rail is working on very closely with the team in order to identify the best ways to manage the rosters to avoid and minimise those impacts on services. The interim timetable has been proven to be working quite successfully during the week. We need to make sure that we deal with and manage the fatigue issues and the fatigue management issues.
So could this go on for 6 months? What about 6 months, 12 months, 18 months?
Well,
2 years?
What I want to reiterate, Steve, is that, as I was saying earlier, as you were highlighting earlier, what we're seeing now is a high level of service to the commuters of South East Queensland, a greater number of services, a greater number of trains than they were experiencing in September.
But this could go on for a couple of years by the sounds of it.
We need to be very focused on relieving the pressures that are on the system now by increasing the pool of train crew. That is what. That's what.
You've made that very clear several times. But what I'm hearing from you is that this problem with the trains in Queensland could go on for 2 years, possibly longer, while you train up, ramp up. You don't know how long this is going to take.
We are making sure we are making sure that we're delivering, as I say, more services than we were delivering in September. We want to expand upon that because that's what our aim and ambition is, to continue to deliver high quality rail services for commuters in South East Queensland.
And this could go on for years.
And part of that will need to be, the picking up the slack that has resulted from the recruitment freeze that happened under the former government, the sacking of Queensland Rail workers.
Minister, sorry, I need you to get clarity for me. What I'm hearing from you is that this could go on for years.
There are strategies that we are working on within Queensland Rail right at the moment to identify how and when we'll be able to progress the recruitment processes with safety being paramount and safety being the first and highest priority at all points, ensure that we deliver the increased levels of train crew sooner. Now, the reality
longer than 2 years, Minister. I
do not see this taking that amount of time.
How long then? How long? How much amount of time do you see it taking?
What I can tell you is that we are expecting to have trainee drivers who are part of the system, who are part of the recruitment that started under the Palaszczuk government, coming to online next month in November. That will further help alleviate the challenges.
But it could go on for a couple of years.
And there are further rounds and further pools of trainee drivers who will be finishing their training. And we are also looking to enhance the ability of that training process, and all of those things will bring forward the point where we can have the confidence to ensure that we can go beyond this interim timetable and provide further services. But this interim timetable is, as I say, delivering more services now than we were seeing the whole of our network deliver in September.
Minister, is it correct that you can't hire, or you're not hiring externally of QR because of your agreements with the unions, the relevant unions in QR, that you should be hiring externally, but you can't, but you have agreements in place that essentially make it a closed shop?
There are systems in place which commence with and have been in place during this government, during the previous government and governments before, which involve a process which sees internal recruitment as the first port of call. That's sensible from a range of points of views, particularly in relation to that is a pool of people who have a level of the safety competencies, who have route knowledge, who have a rolling stock knowledge that's going to be superior to others, and therefore make the training process a quicker and more efficient one.
So,
However,
but you're not hiring externally. That means you're stuck. You have to hire internally because of agreements in place with unions relevant to Queensland Rail. Is that right?
And those arrangements have the ability for external recruitment, but the internal recruitment has to be the first port of call.
And what would be the trigger?
Now that's being worked through now. Obviously, the recruitment, the internal recruitment is occurring now with the extra places and the places that we've committed to as part of our 5-point plan. But they are also points of ongoing discussion with our employees, including a discussion that's happening between the acting CEO and employee representatives today.
All right. Look, I know it's a busy morning for you with Cabinet. Minister Stirling Hinchliffe, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's Minister for Transport in Queensland, Stirling Hinchliffe.